Hi to all the lovely friends of Two Over Easy all day long who celebrate holidays. I wish you a very happy holidays. And if you don't celebrate any holidays in December, I wish you a very merry every day. My gift to you is a reading from chapter 13, and it may not seem like an exactly holiday selection at first glance, but at heart it is about finding friends in unexpected places, and what could be more jolly than that? A white sign with cursive lettering reading Violet Vale announced the farm. A long gravel drive bordered on either side by a split rail fence wound through apple and cherry orchards, ending in front of a periwinkle ranch-style house. Behind the house, as far as the eye could see, there were fields of lavender in every stage of growth and harvesting. The odor sliding in through the open windows of the truck like an oil slick laminating the beach after a spill was overpowering. Tony was momentarily disoriented, remembering the lavender-smelling hands and the string around his neck. He told himself sternly that he was not allowed to have PTSD or anything like it. He was a Gibson, and Gibsons did not suffer from mental illness, not unless there was an expensive and highly confidential sanitarium to which they could gracefully exit for a period of time not to exceed 3 months. Walt parked the truck, and he and Tony approached the yard, which was encircled by sturdy metal fence panels. "Goat fencing," Walt said, as if Tony had asked, "to keep the dogs in." The aforementioned dogs made an immediate appearance and began vocalizing their pleasure or displeasure, in some cases, in baritone and soprano voices. It was hard to tell in the flashing of color and sound, but Tony thought he counted 7 dogs, maybe 8. "Oh, now hush, my darlings," Cracker said, appearing at the door and making kissing sounds to the hairy horde. His words and his kissing sounds had no effect. Crackers wended his way through the throng toward the gate, still calling on them to behave themselves, and even stopping to scold an enormous wolfhound. "Is that any way for a lady to act? Where are your manners, my dear?" The wolfhound looked apologetic, but continued to bark. "To what do we owe the pleasure?" Cracker said to Walt and Tony, stepping over an ancient dachshund whose long graying hair swept the ground, and who appeared to be both deaf and blind, as it was barking wheezily in entirely the wrong direction. And then, catching sight of Tony's mangled face, "Oh, my good and gracious me," he said, "what happened to you?" In a perfect imitation of every gravelly-voiced movie detective, Walt answered, "We were hoping you could tell us." Crackers opened the gate and swept his arm around in a gesture of invitation, gently moving several dogs aside with his foot as they tried to sneak through the opening. He slammed the gate shut with surprising force as soon as Walt and Tony were inside the yard. "This is Marigold," Cracker said, pointing to the wolfhound. "Please sit down, Missy." Marigold sat and showed her enormous yellow teeth. "Don't mind her, she's smiling," Crackers assured them. "And this is Butch," he said, bending over to pat the dachshund on the rump. A gleaming black Labrador who leaned against Tony's leg, pinning him against the gate, was introduced as Kaloo. She looked up at him with immediate and profound adoration. "Kaloo Calais, you see," Cracker said. Perhaps it was the Percocet, but Tony did not see, so Walt clarified. "Come to my arms, my beamish boy. Oh, frabjous day. Kaloo Calais," he said. Claude, the hero of the Broadway musical Hair, Crackers explained, a vaguely terrier-looking animal, continued to bark ceaselessly, stopping only when he stumbled over a dilapidated squirrel-shaped toy, apparently bound by dog code to attempt to tear it to shreds before resuming his barking. Freya, a Great Pyrenees who was probably at some stage in her life a gorgeous dog, but whose fur was so matted and filthy she looked like a refugee from a war-torn country. She gave a final desultory bark in their direction and then curled up again in a dusty depression in the corner of the yard, her nose touching her tail so that her body formed a perfect, grimy circle. Crackers apologized for her lack of social graces. "Freya is the Norse goddess of sexual freedom and fertility," he said, as if that explained everything. "You have so many dogs," Tony said, because he couldn't think of anything else to say. "We need them to guard the farm," Cracker said, sounding defensive. They made it past the gauntlet of dogs and into the house, only to discover one more canine. "Lipton," Cracker said, like Lipton tea. He pointed to a German shepherd resting in a basket by a bay window in an immaculate living room. Sunlight bathed her dark fur like alpenglow on a mountain. She thumped her tail lightly at the mention of her name. Lipton is recovering from surgery on her leg. Torn ligament, Cracker said. And speaking of tea, can I get you boys something to drink? We didn't come here to drink tea, Walt said, and simultaneously, coffee would be nice, Tony said. Cracker smiled, a worried sort of smile, and shuffled in what Tony assumed was the direction of the kitchen. I'll just be a minute, floated back toward them. Make yourself at home. Tony sat down cautiously and was immediately approached by Lipton. I'm a little afraid of dogs, he said. Get over it, Walt said. Even so, he tried to coax Lipton away from Tony, patting the side of the chair in which he was sitting, by way of invitation. But Lipton would not be coaxed. Ever so gently she rested her head on Tony's knee, her intelligent eyes regarding him patiently, one demonstrative ear tipped forward, tail down, but wagging mildly, reassuringly. Tentatively, oh so tentatively, Tony patted her head. Starbucks, Cracker said, reappearing with a tray of mugs. Tony looked around, expecting another dog. No, I mean the coffee is Starbucks beans, Cracker said, guessing at Tony's mistake and grinning. We ground the beans this morning, and this is from a fresh pot. Tony preferred a precise amount of organic half and half and demerara sugar in his coffee, but none was offered, so he endeavored to drink it black. Now then, I don't know why you'd come here after wrestling with the asphalt or trying to give yourself a sandpaper facial, Cracker said, pointing at Tony's face, or why you'd be asking me questions. So let's start at the beginning. What happened? If Walt had a plan, he had not shared it with Tony, so Tony decided honesty really was the best policy when sitting in a periwinkle house being affectionately accosted by a German shepherd named Lipton. I was attacked by a man who smelled like lavender, he said. What the hell, Jem said, appearing in the hall through which they had recently entered. Who done it? For some reason, it didn't sound like irony, like he was saying, who done it? Walt sighed heavily, loudly, an exhalation full of irritation. We don't know, but you're the only people in Mott and Bailey who raise lavender. Do we look like thugs to you? Cracker said. Of course not, Walt growled. Did he have any other way of speaking, Tony wondered? That doesn't mean you're not. And with that, I once again wish you a merry, merry every day.